Hey, friend, and welcome back. In this episode, I'm going to be diving into protein shakes. I see that they've become, for many years now, perhaps even a couple of decades, where they've become a quick kind of go-to fix for many people, whether you're trying to be healthy or fit, or maybe, you know, post-workout type of fuel or meal replacements, or even weight loss or weight management. But are they actually helping your body or are they disconnecting you from it? So let's dive into this topic today. If we're just meeting for the first time, or if this is the first video that you landed on, I'm Sharlene Styles. I'm a nutritionist, a holistic nutritionist, and also life coach. I predominantly work with midlife women to balance their metabolism, their hormones, which often comes wrapped in a nice blanket of weight. And today I want to share with you my hot take on protein shakes. I get asked this question quite commonly, and I was just doing a presentation for a health clinic last week, and this question came up again. So I thought I would address it here and just leave my opinion on the interwebs for all, I don't know. I don't want to say criticism. I don't want to invite that. However, I do want to share my take, and I also want to remind you that this comes through my lens, my experience, my education. So just take what works for you and leave what doesn't. But this is my opinion as a nutritionist, predominantly helping midlife women with metabolism and hormone issues and weight issues. Okay. So, through that lens, the first thing that I'd like to offer you is to consider the protein bioavailability of the product that you may be taking. Like, how much does your body actually absorb and use? That really depends on the source and the form. So, the real story here is when we talk about protein bioavailability, we're really talking about how much your body can actually digest and use. So, not just what's written on the label, but what is actually usable for you and your unique bio individuality. So, we should consider that not all protein sources are considered equal, right? Like, whole foods like eggs, fish, meat, lentils, those sorts of things in their whole natural state, they come wrapped in a package or a natural package of different enzymes, cofactors, minerals, etc., that help our body actually absorb and use them most efficiently. And of course, that's the way nature intended it, right? The earth provides us absolutely everything that we need for free. It's here. But when we strip out the protein and we isolate it and turn it into a powder, that's really what's happening with the shake. It's no longer in its natural form. So it digests faster, which may often sound like it's a good thing, but that quick, simple, like amino acids that the protein breaks down to isn't necessarily ideal. So you may know that your body cannot store protein. I have a little fly flying around. Our body cannot store protein. So your body can only use so many amino acids at once, and the rest get oxidized or excreted. So this is why a slower digesting, sorry, you can't see the fly, I can. The slower digesting proteins from real meals often lead to better overall protein balance. And we'll talk about digestion in a minute, but also more sustained energy because it's taking longer to kind of break down and get absorbed into the body. And a little fun fact for you, if maybe you don't know this or maybe you do, but most often we use whey as a protein replacement or in a shake, and it's highly studied. So there's a lot of evidence and studies regarding whey, but it's interesting that, it's obviously one of the most common protein powders. It actually started as a waste byproduct from making cheese, right? So it used to be discarded at one time because it was what was left over after curds, like the solid part, were removed. And then only later did we figure out how to process this stuff and make it into a high protein replacement. So while whey does contain the essential amino acids that our body needs, which is like full proteins, it is highly processed and actually a leftover product. So it's far removed from how nature actually intended for us to get its protein. So we may also know that when you're drinking something, you're actually bypassing this digestive process that innately we do as humans. This is why we have teeth, right? So when we chew, we secrete these salivary enzymes, and that actually helps our body to slow down the gastric emptying. So this is really essential and a really integral part of proper digestion, and that also signals safety to our body and to our brain because it's, being broken down gradually, not just being slammed with liquid protein. So that's one thing to consider, that faster absorbing is not always better. The second thing that we can consider is what I mentioned earlier, digestion. We have teeth for a reason, to chew things, right? So chewing activates digestion before food even hits or reaches our stomach. And I do also know that digestion starts actually before we even put food in our mouth, right? When we use all of our senses, our sight to see the food, our sense of smell to smell it, to activate. This creates some excitement, some anticipatory, pleasure that's coming or reward. And what that does, if you think about, something that you're looking forward to, what happens? Your mouth waters, right? So that's producing saliva, and there's enzymes in our saliva to trigger the gut to say, "Hey guys, wake up! Food's coming down the chute. Get ready to do your job. Incoming." So basically, this mechanical breakdown that happens in our mouth with the chewing action that starts the process for our nutrient absorption. And then also when we skip the chewing, we also skip this kind of mind-body connection of eating, right? We're just smashing things back in a very fast and convenient way. So we miss the sensory experience of eating, of taking our time, savoring it, let alone the rest, digest, parasympathetic system when we're in a relaxed state, of how much easier our body can actually take food in. So this can also interrupt or mess up our hormone signals and tell us when we've eaten enough and it's time to rest and digest. You may know that when you chew something that's really crunchy and takes a lot of chewing, you actually you get tired of chewing, right? So the more you chew, the more kind of satisfied your body is. And there's studies to prove this. Chewing, I think it's 45 times. There's studies that prove that you eat less the more that you chew because you get tired of the chewing process. But I think it's also because of the mechanical breakdown that we can't overlook. So we bypass that when we're just drinking some kind of liquid, which would come in a smoothie or a shake. And if we look at the next part of this, if we look at the powder themselves, the problem with processed foods like this, and this is really processed, right? Because it didn't come from nature, it didn't come right out of the earth the way nature had intended. It's been touched by man, right? So that means it's processed. So we talked about, there are blends, and most predominantly whey is a common form, but either way, they're still all ultra processed, regardless of where you're getting the protein source from. So you may find that, in order to make them palatable or taste good, there can be artificial sweeteners, there can be gums, there can be thickeners, there can be fillers, etc. But the main thing is there is a chemical extraction that gets the protein out so that we can ingest it. So it's actually taking out the natural cofactors that exist in a whole, real, natural food straight from the earth. So this can also create digestive distress, right? Where we can get gas, bloating, even develop intolerances due to the additives that may be in there and also the denatured proteins. So just something to consider. And you may know from the food industry that manufacturing processes and labeling, and even in the supplement industry, um, is not very strictly regulated, right? So what's on the label may be enticing, it may be some greenwashing, but it always doesn't match what's inside. And more that foods are being tested, we're finding this out. Like there's additional ingredients or ingredients in there that are listed that actually aren't in there. And that's due to a number of reasons. I'm not saying that the protein shake industry is intentionally trying to deceive us, but it does happen. The next thing that we can consider when we're looking from it through a holistic lens, which I do, this connection that we have to nature is innate in all of us, right? And we are so kind of disconnected from not only ourselves, but real food and from nature. So protein shakes are just another symbol of our, like, kind of our fast-paced, convenience-driven culture, right? Like when we are so busy and distracted from our lives, when nourishing our body is not a priority to, like, you know, sit down and have a meal or take the time to prepare a meal, that we have to grab something on the run, we are disconnected from where our food comes from, and keeping us in action mode and go mode to keep striving and doing without actually putting our own basic needs first, which is, nourishment. So I just want to mention this here. Like, of course, food is fuel, but it's not just fuel, right? It's also information for our body. It's connection, and that's how we connect to our natural elements, is by being connected to nature. So this idea of, the chewing, the smelling, the tasting, this all gives signals to our body that we're safe, that we can slow down, that we can actually receive the nourishment. And what a gift, what a privilege, what a luxury to take the time and actually, sit and enjoy and savor the experience of eating. So I just want to say it's not always just about macros, right? It's we can't overlook the connection that we have to our natural environment. At least that's what I would have you consider as a holistic nutritionist. So I'm not kind of, well, I guess I kind of am dissing protein shakes, and I don't mean to. There are a time and a place, I would suspect, for, their use. So, most often maybe when athletes are having an increased demand or requirement for protein, this may be a good option. For those that are in the need of recovery, that they're unable to chew, that digestion is kind of like tempered with. Although if that's the case, I would have them consider maybe bone broth being far more supportive than a processed type of supplement or protein option. Or, of course, when we have um, issues with our appetite, or even when our digestion is temporarily kind of paused or skewed or impaired or compromised, whether that's from, illness or stress, or after surgery, this might be a really good option. And I would say, sometimes in a convenience standpoint, as an emergency when you're traveling, rather than eating crappy airport food, I think, this would take, I always look at things as good, better, and best. So this would be a better option than perhaps picking up some, crappy food at an airport that you don't know its source or is totally packaged. So I would say not to use this as a daily substitute for real food, and use it in those cases only. And if you are using protein shakes now as convenience, I would urge you to, I don't know, maybe have a conversation with me, but look for cleaner products that contain the least amount of ingredients, all things that you can actually pronounce. So, the fewer ingredients, whole food based, this is really what to look for. Oftentimes proteins come now in pea and hemp. At least that comes from a natural source. Although I will caution you that those particular proteins do not contain all the essential amino acids. They're not a complete protein. Or if you are looking for a grass-fed whey, I think that might be another option. So I'm not here to demonize these shakes. It's really just to help you bring awareness and perhaps my opinion, and perhaps not the industry's opinion of grabbing things on the run to just slam in and it's just important to get your protein. I think it's just as easy to throw a dozen eggs in a pot and boil them and have them on hand as they're hard boiled. If you're in a hurry, that's very quick and easy to do. Or perhaps when you're making dinner, make enough for the next day so that you have something quickly to grab in the morning or when you're sitting in your car and driving to wherever you're going, rather than slamming back this liquid protein shake that I think could potentially do more damage than good. So, what I would invite you to consider is this connection to yourself, to your body. Like, what is your body actually asking you for? Am I really reaching for nourishment or is this just out of convenience? So, my invitation to you today is to slow down, to connect or reconnect with food, with nature, and where the food actually comes from. And what a beautiful gift that is. This is really the simplest and most effective way to help boost your digestion and your energy. Please, if you've got any comments, I'm sure this is going to be a controversial topic, but if you want to share below, I would welcome this conversation. And if you need help understanding what proteins are, I will drop a link here too. I created this list of macronutrients for some really healthy options for people to create balanced meals with proteins, fats, and fiber or complex carbohydrates at every meal. So I'll drop the link here below. You can download it and stick around or subscribe. And I would invite you to leave me a comment. I would love to hear what your take is on this subject. And are you using protein shakes or are you eating the real cow? Bye for now.